for joining and for being part of this session. Excited to walk through this content with you. It's something that we at ThisWay Global live and breathe on a daily basis, and we're excited to share some of the thoughts and concepts with you. Our goal today is to talk about some of the steps and processes that we put in place for organizations and the premise behind why we do things the way we do to help organizations achieve workforce diversity. And we have broken it down in a simple model where we talk to companies about 3 steps they can take. And in taking those 3 steps, start to see results of them in 10 days. And those results traditionally begin with their hiring funnel and the mix of the candidates they're engaging with. And then we talk about the best ways to review and engage some of them. So I'm going to walk us through that. Hopefully everybody has connectivity and is not snowbound. And I know we're having some interesting weather across the country. So let me walk through. And again, hopefully everyone's familiar with Zoom. There is a way to ask questions. Please feel free to do so if you have any. And definitely looking forward to getting information or feedback from people as we go through this. So here we go. So my name is Bill Fanning. I am the Chief Revenue Officer for ThisWay Global. I have been in this space for a number of years and feel very fortunate to have worked with some awesome organizations. I chose working with ThisWay Global because through my experience of working at applicant tracking systems and recruitment advertising agencies and HR tech providers, I feel that the technology that Angela and the team here have designed and I've helped contribute to is delivering meaningful change in the way organizations solve what I see to be one of the larger issues facing employers today, which is eliminating or minimizing diversity as they go through the candidate review and hiring process. Angela's on the phone as well. She's the CEO and founder of the company. She is in San Antonio, Texas, from Austin, Texas, but she has, like many people in that area, have some weather challenges. So she's in a hotel in San Antonio, but she is here to help answer questions. I will be the presenter and walking us through the content that we're talking about. So ThisWay Global has a very simple vision, which is to deliver matching that matters and allow through technology, our platform to help match all people to all jobs without bias and really have that happen based on skill set. Can share a little bit about with you what that is. But before we do, I was going to share you a little bit about why we have this vision and what we see. So the workforce that we are part of today is dramatically changing. So our makeup and gender, ethnic background, and all of the other aspects of our candidate population or the working populace of the country is significantly changing. As we think about that, and we look at the latest United States Census, you see a breakdown of how our working populace is categorized. And you see a large percentage of it is white, and then other ethnic backgrounds or racial backgrounds being noted. Hopefully the noises of people coming in are not too loud. I don't know how to minimize that, or I would. So I apologize for that in the background. There are some really interesting demographic trends that are affecting our workforce. And by 2020, you will see a significant reduction, or we already have by 2020 seen a significant reduction in the number of Caucasian people in the workforce. Underrepresented populations are dramatically on the rise. And as we move forward, we will be in a place where there will be a very balanced ethnic background of the workforce that we're looking to employ or come join our company. And what that's driving is our ability to interact and provide a safe harbor for those people to come and be part of that, whatever your employment culture is like. So I'll give you a little bit of an idea of how our workforce is changing. When you look at the up and coming employment or candidates that are coming out of school and coming into our workforce as the baby boomers are exiting, it's a very stark contrast between what we were used to. So when you look at the baby boomers, 76 million of them, there were 75% or 72% of them were predominantly white. When you look at the millennial and Gen Z folks who are coming into the workforce to replace those exiting baby boomers, 56% of them do not identify as white or Caucasian. So our ability to um, embrace diversity is a really paramount issue for an employer and the employer brand that they're dealing with. It's something, though, that obviously the last 12 months have brought very much into the forefront, but it's something that every employer is going to face because our workforce is being replaced with new employees or new candidates coming out of school that are a very different gender and ethnic background. So this is something that I think has been in process of coming about for quite a period of time. And I think the last 12 months have really brought us into a level of awareness that's really important. And so this is how our workforce is changing. So one of the things that is also important is why our workforce focuses on this change. It's because there's a significant amount of discrimination and or harassment that employees or candidates are being faced with. So according to a Gallup poll of the last year, 45% of the American workers that are out there have experienced that discrimination or harassment. And that we'll talk a little bit in a minute about some of the triggers behind that, but that really impacts the employer that those workers work for, their ability to stay there. We see a highly growing trend in the candidate population of people looking to align themselves with an employer that better represents their feelings and background to this. So it's important, and it's growing quite sizably, and it's impacting, by not being obviously managed right through this data, the people who are in the workforce and being exposed to this type of discrimination or harassment. Just to kind of build on that for a minute, I wanted to share what some of the current problems are that I see our organizations facing. So I went out and did some research. By the way, all of the content I looked at is available, and I'll share with you all the sources at the end of this presentation. But some of these statistics I thought were really interesting to help highlight the problems in diversity we're facing today. So today, only 40% of the women that were surveyed feel satisfied with the decision-making process in their organizations around them and their careers. 57% of employees think their company should be doing more around diversity. Managers, though, on the other side of this, and I find this interesting, and we'll talk about this as one of the triggers for bias, is that they stay too busy to implement change. Some other things that I thought were interesting is that men more likely to get hired, 2 times more likely. African Americans are 50% less likely to receive a callback versus a white employee. Angela told me a story when I was thinking about coming to this organization about her challenge as an engineer working in the defense industry, getting interviews and jobs, and that she changed her resume by removing her first name and using initials, and then dramatically improving her ability to get interviews. And that ties really clearly to this point, which are women are much likely to be hired or interviewed through a blind application, not revealing gender. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, why redaction of data can be certainly important in that process as an employer to make better decisions. And then the other thing that I thought was really telling is about 8% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women. So definitely a percentage that needs to grow sizably. And when we do correct some of these things, there are some sizable benefits that we receive as employers through a more diverse workforce. So when we increase our diversity in leadership, teams start to outperform on profitability. CEOs with diverse cultures notice increased profits by doing so. Diversity successes come when the pay is equal, The companies are more likely to capture new markets. It improves innovation. It aligns the organization with the consumer market that they serve. So we have a very diverse populace in our country. And by having a diverse workforce, obviously, it gives you a better alignment, the ability to move quicker and to deliver products that your consumers want. By doing so, you get more cash flow per employees, and inclusive companies are 120% more likely to surpass their financial goals as they embrace these diversity initiatives. And so that's powerful numbers. It drives the message, I think, very clearly from a performance standpoint, but it's also, as from an ethical and moral standpoint, the right way to treat the candidates and the population that's out there looking for employment. I did, as I went through this data, find some highlights of industries where these things are being dealt with in a more proactive manner than potentially some of their peers. So some of the leading industries where diversity wins are financial services, technology, healthcare and education, and professional services, as well as organizations that are technology adopters. There's a great study Forbes did that looked at the top diversity employers that are out there for 2020. And then you can break that down by their industry as well as their geography to see where these things are making change happen. Very interesting data. And so I wanted to share with you some of the summarizations of the industries where these changes were happening. So that just a little bit of a snapshot of what we see at ThisWay as we look at the diversity challenges that are out there and some of the ways that it's impacting different members of our employment community and how fixing them can dramatically increase performance. So we had talked about 3 steps to increase diversity success. And I wanted to walk you through them quickly, give you a little bit of context of what each of those steps are. Obviously, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. We'll also be able to take questions if we don't get time to answer them at the end and get back to you on them. But let me walk you through these, and then I'll share with you a little bit of detail behind each of the steps we mentioned here. The first one is assess. And this is really where organizations need to stop for a minute and determine their diversity strengths and weaknesses. All organizations have positive activities they're doing in areas that they could improve on or do better. We help organizations or talk to them in ways to allow them to deploy internal and external steps to be more diversity and equality focused and improve their performance in those areas. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. The other thing we help organizations to do is expand their ability to reach out to the diverse communities across their organization, and also to do that with a focus on the seniority of the role and making sure that they understand that diversity at a top tier has immediate impact on the ability for their organization to become a more inclusive employer. The final thing we do is step 3, which is help them engage. We work with that organization so they can reach and solve their diversity growth challenges by using technology and data to allow them to have a better engagement process. And on the other side is end the candidate black hole. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is, but I think probably anybody who's been in the career search mode, looking for a job, can understand what the candidate black hole is. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But the first thing I'm going to do is talk for a minute on assessment and how organizations can work to do a little bit better in that area. So this is a quote from Uber, and Uber obviously has had its challenges and its wins in this area. Bo-Young Lee is their Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer. This quote I saw a while ago, but it's always spoken to me because I think it's so paramount in successfully solving these issues, is that diversity and inclusion needs to be something that every single employee has a stake in. It is not something that is just tied to one team. It is not something that is owned by an employee group or just a leadership team. It is something that every employee at the company has to have a stake in and improve upon. And it's really interesting when we think about diversity, because there are some very clear, right, points of it, but there are also uh, different points of diversity or bias that comes in. And so I'm going to talk about them in the terms of conscious and unconscious bias. So this is a diversity wheel, and it shows different degrees of how conscious and unconscious bias happens. So there's a Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist named Eric Kendall. And Eric says that 80 to 90% of our mind works unconsciously. We make decisions unconsciously based on primal tendencies that at some point served us well, so we can quickly move through and make to whatever our next challenge or point of action needs to be. And when we do that, and certainly when we're under pressure, that's where conscious and unconscious bias can come in. So as you look at this wheel, it gives us an ability to look at in the core what we see as very typical drivers of bias, right? We have gender, we have physical and mental ability, we have age, and we have race, the very core things that we talk about. But as we start to expand out of this circle, we start to see where people's religion and belief, ethnic heritage, sexual orientation, and social class start to impact conscious and unconscious decisions that could be made around them. And then as we get to the final part outside of the circle, we start to see some really interesting things around their birthplace, citizenship, and location, community relationships. I'm not going to read them all, but you can really start to see how these drivers view how we review, talk to, and engage potential applicants coming into our organization and employees in our company based on some of these backgrounds, right? So when we think about this and we focus on inclusivity and we want to make improvements here, this is where we focus on inclusivity and diversity, right? We consciously discuss how bias happens, because a lot of people aren't aware of the degrees of conscious and unconscious bias. We encourage peer-to-peer recognitions in organizations so they can talk about and help improve and make people feel included. And I think the key thing that, and it's why I referenced a quote from Uber, is this needs to be something that is owned by all the employees. So there's a great support groups or peer groups that employers put together, but it also needs to be owned by leadership for success. And it needs to be something that's talked about on a regular basis. There's trainings and reviews that can be done. And to create a diverse group that has the support they needed, you also have to be very open to hear and solicit honest feedback so you can make the right changes to bring forward the type of employment culture that you want. I apologize. As a lot of us work from home, we end up with dogs at our feet that are doing things they shouldn't. So sorry for having to correct that dog. So that is how we value diversity. That is step one. And by doing that and understanding that, it impacts our screening process as we look at candidates. The next thing we think about is how do we expand our reach? And the first thing we have to think about is, who are we trying to reach? Our technology that we've built here obviously is designed to deliver improved outcomes for companies, but also for the individuals of all kinds that are trying to apply for opportunity and careers. So we probably look at the diversity market with similar spectrums that you do around ethnic, age, LGBTQ, veteran, culture, and disability. These are the groups that a lot of organizations measure against, and there's definitely a 4 or 5 step process that we go through with a lot of our customers to help them focus here and achieve a little bit better connectivity with these individual groups. So when we want to expand the reach of an organization, we walk them through some clear actions to take. The first thing that we do with a lot of companies is help them define what diversity means to their organization. And really what that is the skill of the applicant independent of their background, to be able to come in and successfully complete the needs or the mission of that role. By doing that, you can write a more inclusive job description. When you look at a job description, they can be very male or female dominant or ethnic focused, or be designed in a way that may prevent or dissuade people from a non-traditional career path from applying. There's some great studies out there. AppCast just did one. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but it talks very clearly about writing a more inclusive job description and giving you a greater ability to connect with diversity applicants. And once you do that, and you review your employer brand, right? So when people come in, they're given a similar experience like the new inclusive job description. And then the clear thing that we talk to companies about is they want more diversity applicants. They have to diversify their outreach. There are phenomenal sources of authentic online communities of diverse applicants, veterans, social, economical, ethnic, gender backgrounds, where you can connect and make meaningful connection around your employment opportunities. And the most important thing is when those applicants come back in, you have to evaluate them by removing bias, and that's both conscious and unconscious. And when you do that, you give them a skill-based evaluation that your organization should, to see who's the right person to fill the job. And that's where the engagement comes in. And this is something that is really important, because now you've gone through a process of assessing your needs and expanding your reach, bringing more diversity candidates in. And now how you engage with them really sets the tone for the success of that process, or of those efforts. So we talked a little bit about conscious and unconscious bias and how our decision-making works. Bias flares based on stress and workload quite often in a workplace situation. So we've found that on average, an employer receives 250 plus applicants per open position. Now, there's wide swings on either way, but that's an average to consider. Based on the workload and time, the average recruiter, though, only has time to look at about 15% of the resumes that come in, right? So they're not given the pace to easily go in and fairly consider each of the applicants. A lot of it's left for technology, or it's done in a haphazard manner. And when they review those applicants they come in, they don't spend a lot of time doing that based on the workload, the number of recs they have to fill. Some of the tools out there also based, like for example, a LinkedIn profile with photos and things of that nature, can drive that unconscious bias challenge. And that's where decisions start to be made by commonality, or things that are, hey, the hiring manager is a veteran, so I'm gonna just pass veterans to them, or hiring managers, male or female, so I'm gonna pass male or female applicants, and it's not even done at a conscious level. It just happens because we're trying to move quickly. And again, our brain is doing 80 to 90% of our thinking or making decisions to support our conscious decisions subconsciously. That's what sometimes create what we call the black hole. And by doing this, a lot of applicants don't get considered, and you can leave your best applicant on the table. The other thing that's challenging here is that you've had a ton of people, and in an RPO environment, this becomes exponentially more important. You have a ton of people who have raised their hand and who have wanted to work for that employer. And they're sitting now in an ATS database, or another similar type of capability, system, and you don't have the capability to go in and quickly and efficiently evaluate that skill set based on the current requisition you're working on. So they may get passed over when they apply, but then your ability to match and use that connection doesn't materialize, because you also don't have the ability to go back and look at them quickly. So that's where we say focusing on the applicant skill and using some data to easily go back in and look at all of the applicants with a structured framework is very important. What it allows you to do is review each and every applicant fair and consistently based on skill. You can establish the process and goals needing to make that happen. It can be simple, measurable, and it probably should be technology driven so it's consistent. Um, it's important, and obviously there's training and things that need to happen to make people understand why it's important. And then you can set some KPIs around that. We always suggest coming up with a couple. Um, it can be the ethnic background or the gender or how we look at them or the process they go through. It really depends on the organization, but then we can round that down just to one to make it simple and consistent. And I think the most important aspect of this is similar with the other things we're talking about is the ability to have dialogue and communication and consistently work to improve this process. And that's a fair way to look at it. So as we go through this, we also identify some mistakes that organizations could run into, and we help them consider how to potentially fix them. So the first one is unbiased look at everyone. Evaluate all of the candidates and look at them in a way that allows you to evaluate them based on their skill set and their ability to do the job. Look, we're still going to get the taxi cab driver, or probably more current term is an Uber driver that wants to be the CFO. And obviously the skill set doesn't align, but fair and consistent evaluation makes that very important. We also want you to involve the entire organization, not in the candidate evaluation, but in the diversity mindset, understanding that each member of the team, go back to the Uber quote and why it resonates with me, really helps people understand that if we want to be a better employer, we want to have a more diverse and inclusive culture, then it starts with each and every member of the team. The other thing that's really important is that there's a massive opportunity in the job market right now, and there's a great opportunity to grab talent. We're working remote. That dramatically expands the potential of the candidates that are out there. A lot of organizations we'll still go back to an office environment of a hybrid model, but I think the remote worker or the remote percentage of the workforce will always be significantly higher than it has been in the past. And the thing that's really part of this presentation is have a plan. We recommend simple in the 3 steps that we just went through, but start with the diversity framework and make sure you have members of your organization that are aware of it and helping work to manage it. That is a huge driver for change and the success of those changes. And so I've kind of gone through that and walked you through it. One of the things, and this is where we as an organization come in to help companies and RPO organizations, which we have phenomenal value in working with your candidate database and making that match happen quickly and fairly and efficiently, is this is where AI can step in and help. And I love HAL 2000, so I always steal that image because to me, that's from a childhood AI memory. But we have the ability to walk in and help organizations execute in a lot of these areas. And so what I wanted to introduce you to as a closing model is ThisWay Global. We are a diversity sourcing and matching platform, right? So for a lot of organizations, we can debias their job descriptions for them. We can go out and source active, diverse applicants applying for those specific jobs. We have the ability also to find passive candidates through a diverse network we've built of over 3,500, what I call online, authentic, diverse communities, not job boards, but sources of diversity candidates. For example, we work with the Department of Defense and the military's transition assistance program. So we have access between 14 and 16 million veterans, 4 to 5 million of them that have security clearances. So that's a source of authentic diversity candidates for veterans, and that's what I'm talking about. The other thing, and this becomes certainly powerful in an RPO model, is we have the ability to reveal well-qualified past applicants, whether they're applying for another position at this current time, or they've applied for a position earlier, a month, 6 months ago, depending on the time frame, and we can bring them back up and show that they're a phenomenal fit for your current requisition based on their skill set. that becomes very powerful. There's some premise going around with all of the data online that a lot of organizations have already met most of the candidates they're going to need to fill their positions. And they already have some data around that person. They just don't have the ability to quickly and efficiently engage that data and take action with it. So with our technology, the ability to find that past applicant and use them to fill a current position because you've already started that connection becomes very simple and efficient. So I wanted to just show you one final thing and just an example of our software. What you can see here is that this is a position for a telecommunications solution engineer. You can see that we've found 15 qualified applicants. 28 of them were directly applying for this job. 56 were indirect, meaning they came from that candidate database. We've been able to source 300 passive candidates. So if we don't have enough people and we need more, we have the ability to start doing outreach. And this is phenomenal. So if anyone's ever done sourcing on LinkedIn and you think about the time it takes to source a couple passive candidates, having 300 delivered to your fingertips is, to me, exceptionally powerful. The other thing that becomes really important, the way our technology works, is we evaluate applicants based on their skill set. And we have 7 years of experience that we've built into this matching capability, and it's exceptionally powerful. We've matched over 15.5 trillion matching events on 48,000 job types and about 356 or so million applicants. That's allowed us to build a massive lexicon that makes matching happen. It's not just keyword, it's exceptionally powerful in looking at skills to a job, and it really becomes powerful when you have people coming from non-traditional employment careers. Veterans is a great example, but there's a myriad of them. We redact the data, so what you're looking at is their ability to do the job. And what we're mitigating is the drivers for conscious and unconscious bias. So you can go in here, quickly look at the applicant, see that they're a great fit for the role, view their profile, and take action with this person. All of this, by the way, can be built into an ATS system or an RPO system. We have a UI to show people the functional capabilities, but it's an exceptionally powerful way to automate your recruiting process. So instead of spending time recruiting, you're delivered a candidate pipeline of highly qualified, well-matched applicants and passive candidates, so you can start coming in and working to fill roles. So that is a summarization of the data and ThisWay Global. We are certainly working with a number of RPO organizations and their customers. We're excited to always work with more. My contact information is here, and we'd love to talk and see if we can go do great things together. So I appreciate it very much. I thank everyone for their time. Hopefully that was helpful and meaningful information. Now would be a great time to answer some questions. If anyone has any, please let us know.
Very good, Bill, and I'm happy to moderate the questions as well. I want to welcome Angela to our platform. Both Bill and Angela are first-time guests at the RPO Leadership Forum, and we're particularly delighted to have them. So thank you both. I also want to just share a quick remark about the logistic glitches that we had with this webinar, with all the storms we had over this weekend and other technical issues. We did switch our virtual venue last minute from our traditional GoToWebinar platform to Zoom this year, just for the ease of working with this platform. So we have a few of you starting with GoToWebinar, and I'm glad you found us here. So thank you for your flexibility and for making that transition. Going forward, I do want to announce that the RPOA is moving to Zoom going forward, just because of the experience and engagement. We want to make this program engaging, and we welcome your participation. The other change that we are making with this program is we're moving to a 30-minute format for each presentation, and we also are moving to a regular schedule. So the second Tuesday of each month at noon, if you want to mark your calendar, we're going to have a different speaker and a different topic. We're always looking at covering trends and best practices in talent acquisition, in particular as it applies to the RPOA audience. And with that, again, if you have any questions, we're happy to take them. I do want to kick us off, Bill, with some questions I have for you. And some of those are on the content that you delivered today, but also want to include some questions with respect to ThisWay. And I welcome responses from both you or Angela on those. The first questions are in terms of common diversity and inclusion mistakes that you've probably seen some organizations are making with your experience working with different organizations and with the focus you have. What would you say some of the common mistakes, if you will, that organizations are doing when it comes to their diversity and inclusion in their workplace?
Bill, is it okay if I take this one?
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to.
First of all, Lamise, thank you for welcoming us. And we're really very fortunate to have a partnership with RPOA. So thank you very much for that. I would say that the number one challenge that we see is approaching diversity as a single point in time. So we're going to do diversity now, and we're going to do it for 1 year, something like that. And that's not how diversity works. But furthermore, and I think the most important thing that needs to be addressed is that diversity should not be, we're going to go and try to find more women, or we're going to go try to find more veterans, or we're going to go to try find more Latina women. That is not the right approach. The approach is remove the bias, let the candidates show you who they are, and you will find that they are diverse. And you will find a great mixture. You'll find people from different ethnic backgrounds. You'll find LGBTQ candidates, and they will be qualified for your jobs. That's the great thing. You don't have to set your qualifications aside either. But you do need to make it very clear that you are an open organization, that you are committed to diversity, and that you're committed to including them in the culture of the business once they come on board and are part of the company. And those things, there's a lot of the steps that Bill just covered. We go through a pretty great deal of onboarding with our customers to help them understand how to execute that. A lot of times the companies are already doing some of these things. They're just talking about it wrong, or they're positioning it a little bit incorrect, and it causes candidates not to feel welcome. And so a bad job description causes diverse candidates oftentimes to not even apply when they're fully qualified and they really want to work for you. And so those are the kinds of things we really focus on. But the number one, aside from making it just a moment in time initiative, is to open the thinking and say, let's bring all of the qualified people in, and we're going to have diverse results. And that is part of the reason why we built the network that we built to supply to our customers.
So it sounds to me more like the core values for the organization, as opposed to just hiring strategy, is what you're describing.
It is. I mean, so if you can imagine your customer base, because the population is more diverse, your customer base is going to be more diverse. So your team should be more diverse. I mean, that's logical. We just haven't thought about it like that for many years. And now people are on board with, yes, we need to make these changes, but it's the how part of it. And so the how part is to set aside some of the previous ways of, and it's not company's fault and it's not individuals' fault. It has to do with, policies that get put in place where recruiters are sent down and said, you are in charge of hiring veterans. You are in charge of hiring women. You are in charge of hiring Black men. I mean, so they're giving these very specific initiatives, and really that causes all kinds of other problems. That's not diversity.
Mhm.
And so diversity is really being more open-minded about it. And this, when you can change that and you learn how to talk about it, and we certainly help our customers do that, the management of the companies also come on board. Most of the customers, so we grew from less than 100 customers, all enterprise or primarily enterprise, to now over 3,000 in less than 1 year. And the reason why that happened is because people have figured it out that this is a business imperative. It's no longer a nice to have. And so we've gotten a lot better about learning how to help companies make this transition too.
Fantastic. And my next question is something Bill touched base on when he shared some examples of industries that are handling D&I well. And one of the industries that I love that did include women in particular in their hiring and did it very well is in symphony. So as might of you some know, for the longest time, the symphony industry was men dominated. And not until they implemented the Black Curtain edition, when the players actually audition behind the curtain, the conductors don't get to see them, that women finally made it into that industry. The military industry, that they use some of that methodology into the new transformation they did to their recruiting systems. There is a great Harvard Business Review article about the changes they implemented. I would recommend that very well. So I'm not sure if this is very appropriate to ask, but thinking in the general terms, probably, can you think of any example of a company that's probably doing diversity and inclusion well? Would you say, Bill, you referenced Uber. Do you think they're doing well?
I think Uber, so let me answer that in an interesting way. Do I think they're doing well? I don't know. Do I think they're honestly admitting where they've had challenges, where they can improve, and how they're approaching it? Yes. And I think they're being clear, and I think they're being transparent. As a matter of fact, you can go to their website and you can download their 2020 Diversity and Inclusion Report that will show you a very specific breakdown of their diversity initiatives and what their employment population looks like. And I find that fascinating. And to me, that's at the heart of what organizations need to do to improve their employer brand. So has Uber had negative connotations around their ability to be a diverse employer or service provider? Absolutely. Have they owned that? Yes. Are they taking the appropriate actions and clearly making a very transparent effort to communicate it? Absolutely. And that, to me, is what I like to see organizations doing. And another great example, just by way of watching the news this morning, was Chobani Yogurts. Their CEO is on the news. And what I liked about his message is talking about the ability to empower ethnic immigrants coming into our country and finding meaningful employment and being able to bring a little bit of their heritage into the United States of America and build a business around that, and how he's been successful doing that, but now he's acting as a catalyst for a whole next generation coming behind him to do something similar. And I think those are great examples of organizations that are either owning diversity or doing a good job executing on diversity.
Well, and I also think that we should highlight Pitney Bowes was ahead of this by years. They had prioritized diversity before I think any of the really well-known companies did, and have been very open about the challenges around it. They've been tracking their own success for decades. It's super interesting. And like, I don't think people go, oh yeah, Pitney Bowes being the leader in this, but they really have been. Certainly we look to them for thought leadership when we're trying to study what is working and what is not working, because they've been doing this for so long.
Very good. And I do want to mindful of our participants' time. We did promise the 30 minutes, but honestly, I'm really grateful to have the time with both Bill and Angela, and I had a lot of questions. So if you can stay with us, if Bill and Angela can stay with us, I do have a couple of more questions for you.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Very good. My next question is, and we, just as with ThisWay, we are also very grateful for the partnership with the company. As Angela said, ThisWay just joined the organization late last year. Bill was coming on board, and it's been exciting to see the transformation and the growth of the company. We're very proud of ThisWay, and we're very excited to have their perspective as well and contribution. So my question, as a new member of the RPOA, a new company, and I am interested to know about the organization, can you help us understand how you work with the different partners? Because if I understand it correctly, you work both directly with the employers, but you also work with RPO providers and other business partners. So explain to us how you work. How is your business model like?
So I want to have Bill explain most of this, but I want to say one reason why we became RPOA members, before he does that, is we were talking to companies and we were onboarding companies, 10 or 15 a week. And I would ask them, okay, so what specifically will you be using our technology for? And they would tell us about a subsection of their company. And then I would say, well, what are you using for the rest of your hires? And it would be, oh, well, we're working with said RPO. And I would say, okay, great. And then they were like, and we're really frustrated because they're not willing to use your technology. And so then as the conversation went on, it would be like, we're looking to move to a new RPO because we need diversity. We need to make sure we're removing bias in all of our jobs and not just this one small subset. And that is not what we want to have happen. We want the RPOs that have been working with these companies to stay, for that relationship to stay and for it to become stronger, because you already know the company. Like the RPO already knows the company. If both sides are using our technology to make this improvement, then that's going to be better for the customer, and the RPOs win and we win as a company. And so we really want to partner in that way. And that's when this part of the reason why I brought Bill on into the company is I said, we've got to figure out a better way to do this where RPOs are not being disrupted by us, because that's not our intent. Our intent is to be their partner. And so when I brought Bill on, he had a great way of thinking about it. So I'd like for him to explain that. But that's how all of this evolved, is we were like, how can we best serve the customer? How can we increase diversity and not disrupt RPOs?
Yeah, and so when we look at a partnership and not serving a direct customer, we're actually thinking about that value proposition that service provider, technology partner has to their end customers. And so we want to make that RPO as capable as possible of extracting the maximum value out of their candidate database. So you're investing time and energy on a regular basis to build candidate connectivity to fill positions. And when you fill a position, you have a number of candidates left over, whatever that number is, that still have value. The challenge is how quickly and efficiently can you work with them to make that candidate a potential applicant for that next role you're working on. And that's where our technology comes in, is it takes that and empowers all of the recruiters in the RPO to exponentially increase their ability to use the value of the candidate database you already have. So in an RPO model, that's exceptionally powerful, but on other technology providers, an applicant tracking system or a CRM, candidate relationship management system, we have the ability to give that same functional capability in that technology through an OEM partnership or referral agreement, depending on how we partner, to maximize the value of that candidate database for those employers. So when you walk into a large organization, a large employer that's sitting on an ATS system that has a sizable candidate database, there's a tremendous amount of value. The challenge is the ability to extract it is really cumbersome and often quite manual. And that's what our system has the ability to solve. and make a very simple task of, where in the past it could have been very challenging or complex. And so instead of coming in and restarting the wheel every time you need to fill a position, you're continually going back and consistently looking at all of the applicants you've already received to see who's the best fit, and then adding to that in incremental amounts through our network for more candidates. Like, we're not replacing other traditional sourcing and other tools, but we're a nice supplemental source of diverse applicants, but we're maximizing the value of all your applicants at the same time. So to me, that's an incredible value proposition that, from an RPO standpoint, I think has a lot of value, but also from a technology provider, enabling their employers, their customers, to get the most value out of the system that they're partnered with.
Very good. And I do want to end with this question for Angela. And Angela, I know you answered this a million times, but I heard it one time, and I love your story about how and why you started your company. If you would take a minute to tell our audience that story.
Sure. So I graduated out of Texas A&M University, and I'm a construction engineer. And so the super excited because I got a job at the Large Blast Thermonuclear Simulator at White Sands Missile Range. And I showed up as the lead field engineer, and there was another person that showed up for a new job that same day, and the other person was a man. And so we show up, we walk into the building, and they say, okay, that's your desk over there, and hey, here's your desk over here. So I go to my desk, and I find that I don't have any of my engineering charts on my or on the walls. I don't have any of the engineering equipment I need because I'm out in the field, and so I have a lot of tools I need. And about that time, the gentleman that was hired on the same day, he shows up over at my desk, and he was like, there's all kinds of crazy stuff all over my desk and my walls, and I don't know what any of this is. I was like, okay, I think you have my desk. So I go over, I look, I'm like, yep. So then I realized that they just assumed when I showed up that I would be the secretary, and he was actually the secretary, and he would obviously be the engineer because he was a guy. And then they proceeded to give me a pink hard hat, and I had a pink porta-john out in the field, and they had wrapped it almost like we were going to have a baby shower or something. It was pink and had all kinds of stuff all over it. I was like, what is going on? And I felt like that they had probably good intentions, but things went very south very quickly. And I had applied for the job. I think this was a part of the story that Bill referred to. Is my name's Angela, but my middle initial is L. And so I learned to apply for jobs using AL Hood, because that would mean I would actually get an interview, or they would look at my resume. If I applied using Angela, I would never hear from them. And so these combination of events, I really understood what it felt like to not have an open, diverse view of me. And I also felt like what it was not like to be, or what it's like if you're not included. So all the pink stuff was really not great. And so this kind of combinations, and then me being in engineering for 15 or 20 years and seeing the other things that play out because of that. My husband is now a retired Marine, and he was a fighter pilot. And when the Marine Corps, or when the federal government's matching system that the VA had put together with the Department of Labor that's on the military bases, when it matched, it said that he should be a women's shoe salesman at Macy's. And there were live pilot jobs in the system at that point in time, and it just couldn't even do the most basic matching. And that's what military veterans are left with. And I continue to see this in every facet of life. And the more I learned about it, and the more I grew my own technology relationships, I realized I could probably solve this if I would just really put some effort towards it. And so that's why I went to Cambridge University. I was accepted there in England. I spent 3 or 4 years working with the university's direction and also with 9 countries in the Department of Defense. And that's kind of what brought us to here where we are today. But all of it is focused on leveling the playing field is the way I like to think about it.
Yeah, so I find that very remarkable. You decided not to solve the problem for yourself, but for a whole wide other group of people as well.
Someone has to do it.
Yeah, good for you. And with that, I do want to wrap up our call today. I do want to thank our speaker, Bill Fanning, and our guest, Angela Hood, for being on the call. And I do want to thank all of our participants. Thank you so much for being with us. And I look forward to having you at next month's RPO Leadership Forum. Again, it's the second Tuesday of the month at noon Eastern Time. And with that, I wish you all a great rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.